guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're back on our Defender 90 Blue Hue build. Now, we're calling it Blue Hue because we're going for like a galvanized kind of look. We're going for a classic appeal. And in the last video, you guys saw us retrim up the interior for the most part in that brown fluted leather. Now, we think it looks absolutely amazing, and we were missing a base actually. So the first job is going to be retrimming that driver's seat base from denim twill into that lovely chocolate leather. That's gonna be really cool to see that whole interior come together. And then in this video, it's gonna be sacrilege, maybe a little bit to some of you guys. It is a little bit to us, but we're gonna be cutting in rear windows. Now this vehicle has a little bit of an issue because you can't see anything in the interior. When you're coming to a junction, it's very dark inside, and I think bringing a bit of much needed light into the cabin is gonna make all the difference. So we are going with side sliding windows on this one, and I have gone for a non-tinted, so it's gonna keep that classic look. It's going to bring loads of light into the cabin, and then we're going to mount those bench seats in the back. So first port of call is retrim that seat base, and then we'll jump straight on and cut some holes in this bad boy. So guys, Leon has got the bonnet missing and apparently the top of the engine. So what's going on, Leon?
Right, so when we're checking over, we noticed that there's a bit of an oil leak coming from the rear two injectors. So we've just gone ahead and done a full injector seal kit on it and valve cover seal kit.
And if we didn't do that, what would happen?
What normally happens quite often is the copper seals go, over-pressurizes the crankcase and can cause premature failure on the turbo.
So that's an important one.
That's a very important one. This one seems to be smoking a little bit. And we've pulled the intake pipe off of the turbo, and notice there's quite a bit of movement. So we're going to be replacing the turbo cartridge.
So we're just doing a cartridge, not a full turbo?
Just a cartridge.
Nice.
It's more cost effective.
It's the exact same level of repair, isn't it? It's quite a fun little detailed.
It's quite easy to do as well.
Yeah,
So,
nice. So we will leave you to it, and obviously we're fitting Corteco. Now this is Land Rover subcontract Corteco, I'm sure, for their seals.
I'm sure they're stamped on the original
on the actual, yeah, in a genuine bag. So this is a genuine seal in a non-genuine box, if that makes sense. But yeah, what Leon's trying to say is obviously we are just changing the rocker cover, all the gasket kit, injectors are out. We're going to clean everything up, reinstall it all, and then we'll change the turbo. And it should be good to go, shouldn't it? Everything else is mechanically all sound on this.
Yeah, well, we'll change and she'll run like a dream.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to cut some holes on the side.
Nice.
Okay guys, so we're at the point of no return now. Well, actually, we're not just yet, but we've marked everything up, so I've double checked the measurements, and I've removed the inner structure support. Now, the panels on these are 1.2 millimeters, and I've seen the comments previously, some funny comments like structural integrity has left the chat and stuff like this, but check this out. There's no structure or any support. The only support is this little brace here. And because this is on a ladder frame chassis, the body is essentially a crisp packet and just flexes all over the place. So what we're doing is when we cut out this panel, yes, of course, we'll be removing some structural integrity, but those window frames that we'll be fitting will add in more support than we've removed. So they can go off-roading, trailing, etc. if you're in America, twisting, all that kind of good stuff. This still has plenty of flexibility and the windows will stay in place, and we're not going to compromise any structure, etc. Obviously, once we do cut the hole in the panel, that's it really. You've got to make sure it's right, because if it goes wrong, then it's a whole new panel, or you kind of make the aperture bigger and then you put panoramics on. Now I don't want to go for panoramics on this because it would give it too much of a modern vibe. So we've got to make sure that this is 100% arrow perfect in terms of how it sits in the frame, and then it'll be drilled and riveted and bonded to that frame. And we should have windows finally. So this is going to be the first side we're cutting, and there's nothing more but to grab some tools. I'm going to be using a jigsaw for this because I'll have more control. I can take it slow and get this thing cut open. So let's do it. Right.
I'm not going to say it.
So guys, that is one window fully complete, all bonded in, all riveted in. We're obviously going to polish this all up and clean it, but we've got to do the other side, and then potentially those little back ones, the quarter lights, just to add as much light into this as possible. But looking really smart. Installation looks super neat, and we're going to add those inner trims as well. I think that looks really smart, and then we can bolt those bench seats in maybe tomorrow. So guys, it is the next morning, and sneakily yesterday off camera I offered up a genuine inner window trim, and check out that thing. You probably can't even see, hang on, that would help, wouldn't it? Now that window cutting couldn't have been more factory. So we've offered up window trim. This is going to have window trims, which means I've got to cut some holes into these today. We've offered up a bench, but how cool is this? This interior is coming together. You can actually see the interior now, and I just think it looks so good. The same as this side. We haven't fitted the trim on this side, so I'm going to mount up this trim, that trim, get these benches in, and then I'm going to cut the holes. I know you're thinking, why don't you cut the holes first for putting the seats? But I'm going to sheet these up or hoover them after. It's not a problem, but I just want to make sure these all fit correctly before going cutting more holes in the car. But it's looking super cool, and I'm really starting to like the fact that we've got windows in this. Now I have got a car over here, which I'm going to take templates for the rear quarter lights on, and I can make sure that hole is absolutely perfect. But looking super cool. Let's get it going. So guys, Leon has stripped down the turbo, and I just wanted to talk about this for just 2 minutes because we have a lot of phone calls come through and a lot of defenders that come through here where they have sort of like a limp mode that happens at about 70 miles an hour up a hill, engine goes into limp mode, reduced performance, switch the ignition off, switch it back on, fault goes away. And we've had this, you've probably seen this a lot of times at Leon, haven't you, that comes through.
Yeah.
This is the issue. Now, this is a Defender 2.4, and I believe this only happens on the 2.4. It might happen on the 2.2s as they start to age. Now, Leon's got the turbo stripped down, and although this turbo cartridge has a bit of play in it, this isn't the issue of why this car was in limp mode or why I could feel that it was surging at a certain rev range. It was starting to go backwards and forwards. It kind of felt like you're playing with the throttle. And the problem we've got is this is a variable vane turbo, so it likes to change. What does it explain to me, Leon?
Basically, it points the fins into different ways onto the impeller.
And that dumps more boost?
So it's like, you remember when you get the little fan when you're a kid on the end of a stick?
Yeah.
And if you blow it in a certain way, you can make it go faster or slower,
Yeah.
depending on what way you're blowing it. It's exactly the same thing.
And what use would that be to the engine?
So at lower RPM, it can
You
move
get
the
more
fins
boost.
round, so it creates less lag, essentially.
Amazing. Right, so that's what's happening. And as these vanes are trying to move, diesel being diesel is sooty, right? So as it combusts, you get a lot of soot and a lot of that, you know, when you're sitting behind a bus, that kind of black soot powder. That also goes through the turbo and the exhaust, obviously, because this is part of the exhaust system. Now, if you look at the turbo here, these are the vanes that are trying to move. So it's trying to do this, and essentially you can see all that black carbon build up. So this is the problem. Obviously, when it's trying to move over, it can't because it's getting caught up with all this carbon deposits. And essentially the engine is recognizing that you get an overboost condition. So if we do scan a Defender 2.4 and it comes up with an overboost code and everything else is all in order, it's most likely going to be that the turbo requires a rebuild. Now, obviously, yes, it is easy to just go and buy a whole turbo assembly, throw it on the car, problem fixed. But that moves a lot of the funding and a lot of the money onto the customer. If we strip down the turbo, replace the cartridge, clean the housing assembly, we've got our ultrasonic cleaner over there. We're going to dump all the bits of the turbo and we're going to clean everything up. Then we're going to put our new balanced cartridge in. We only use a Melit core. Build it all back up, paint the housings. That is essentially a reconditioned turbo, and that problem will disappear. Now, of course, if you are on a budget and you're handy with the tools, you could absolutely strip this turbo out. You could clean all this up. You could put this turbo back in. There is a little bit of excess play, but it's not going to... It'll definitely go for another year or so, but just while we're here, obviously it makes sense. These aren't that expensive. It's just the labour side of things, which is, I guess, the costly part. But just a little bit of knowledge there. If you have an overboost condition up a hill when you're loading up and you get a sudden cut of power, the engine light's on, or you don't even get an engine light on, switch it off and it goes away, it's most likely going to be the turbo, the variable vanes that are sticking. So we are going to rebuild this turbo. We're still waiting for the core to arrive, so Leon's just going to clean everything up, and I'm still mucking out cutting the windows in that Defender. That is your actuator, isn't it? So when your electron actuator, that's all fine, even though it's covered in soot.
Yeah, so that's a bit that sits inside.
So we've got a few that are free,
Yeah,
and
they're
that
nice
one
and free.
particularly is lock solid.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
that
good.
can't move, so we're going to have to free that up.
Try and work it out. That was a little bit sticky, but yeah, this ring obviously sits on there.
It's interesting, isn't it, when you start tearing something down and seeing how it actually works.
It's a bit of an, obviously we're used to it because you just replace the whole unit.
Okay guys, so this is a factory cutout. Now the factory cutouts for the side windows, they look like they've been cut with a steak knife. Now these look actually laser cut, and I initially thought we could actually cut up some of the old aluminium panels, template them off, and then we could draw them around and make them absolutely perfect. However, that actually seems like a lot of work, and Land Rover being Land Rover, things are much simpler. So from the top down to this seal, we've got 50mm, and that's 50mm right up to the corners. We got 50mm in from the panel, 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 And then we got 70. And then I was thinking the corners, what can be done? And Land Rover in their infinite wisdom. Check this, come up close. A brand new roll of tape is what the Land Rover tooling is.
That's a special tool in the factory.
Literally the corners, all the corners are this is our new special tool. What can we call this? Juice special tool 106.
SP50165.
So a brand new roller tape, so we're just going to do 70, 50, 50, 50, roll tape, roll tape, roll tape, roll tape, roll tape. Well, what we said there was, look at this, masking tape corners.
That's it, yeah.
So we've got
Wipe it off.
50, 50, 50, 50, 50, 70, and then this is ridiculous. Land Rover. That is absolutely perfect for a 4mm glazing strip steel. I wonder if their machines cut the glass with a piece of masking tape. So guys, it's the next day and we've had our delivery of our turbo cartridge assembly. Now I've gone for a Mellet core. We always, when we're rebuilding a turbo, go for a Mellet core. I have fitted once one of these cheap Chinese turbo cartridges, and I think I literally got down the road before the nut fell off the end of it and caused quite a bit of damage. So I only fit the best now, and Mellet is a really good core. It comes with a balance certificate, so it's all been pre-balanced, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the whole reason we're fitting this new core is because, for one, we're already here, and it would be silly not to. And two, obviously our old turbo cartridge had a bit of excess play on the journal bearing. Now this is, turbo has a journal bearing in the center. It is fed with oil. I won't go too much into depth, Google it if you want to know. This one has no play because it's brand new. So we're going to be installing this new cartridge. Now, you did actually see yesterday, we put this turbo was covered in all carbon deposits, all that kind of nasty stuff, and that's why those veins were sticking up. That's why we were having that sort of surging, and that reduced performance message that eventually lit up the dash when you're going up a hill or something. So we've had all of our parts out of the parts cleaner. I'll show you what the parts cleaner has done. It does a wonderful job, and it just makes sure that this assembly, when we put all that together, can perform as the manufacturer intended. So guys, what you can see here is the turbo in the vise. Now this is the turbo housing, the exhaust side, the hot side in the vise. Now these are the vanes which we saw getting seized up, and in order for us to get behind this and clean all the carbon and soot deposits, we had to remove the variable part of it. Now there are 3 M3 4x20mm high tensile studs. Now 2 of them actually snapped. It's very common that they do, and luckily when they do snap, most of the time you're left with a bit of a stud behind where we can actually then get some mole grips on, take them out and replace the bolts with some fresh ones. So that did actually happen in this case, but obviously we snapped 2 of them, get the whole assembly out, you're left with the turbo housing itself. We have cleaned all this up in the parts cleaning that you guys saw us carrying out, and then we are here with all of our vanes. Now all these vanes, if you remember, they were super seized up. Every single one now is free to do what it's supposed to. Now this obviously, one of them was completely lock solid. These are all nice and free. So we can go ahead and we can pop all this back together now, and we can fit this with our new M3 bolts. So we can pop all these in and start reinstalling this new cartridge, put the whole thing back together. In an ideal world, I want to paint these, so I probably will paint them, give it a bit of freshen up, and we can pop this back on the car. Okay guys, so here is our completed turbo assembly. We're still yet to give it a coat of paint, but obviously there's no play in that journal bearing anymore, and this is our brand new pre-balanced turbo assembly. The vanes aren't stuck anymore, which is great because it means that we can dump any boosts or whatever magic happens inside there is still going to retain that. And next thing to do is just chuck it straight on the car, and then something else will happen. So guys, that brings us to an end of this build, and this is probably the last time you're going to see it with its own dedicated video. I think just for the sake of it anyway, I'm probably just going to have the front 2 door cards and the rear boot door card wrapped in the same chocolate leather. It would just really bug me, and I think that would just help tie that whole cabin together. I think I'm also going to fit that wooden steering wheel we talked about in the first video. But this has just been such a really nice experience for me to build this car, and for the whole team anyway. Aside from all the mechanicals that we do anyway and usually, it's nice to try something a little bit more classic. A lot of what you guys see us do is modernising, refining, air suspension, you know, lifting these things up to a whole level which is for today's modern roads. And I think this is really refreshing. I don't think, if anyone knew the Defenders or anything like that, I think that would look like a genuine Land Rover. And I think even the farmers approve of it. And if that means anything, that means that it's done right. Very old school, classic styling. The steels work all body matched and all that galvanised trim all over it. And then to tie it off with that chocolate leather, I think that was a bit of a risk personally, but I think it paid off massively. It's too easy to go for the tan option, but I've done that before on the channel and you guys have seen it. And I think the chocolate really just ties that kind of level of sophistication together that we've gone for with this kind of build. And I hope that you guys have enjoyed watching it. There was actually a bit of a gap on this one, so I apologise, but we're just absolutely flat out busy. It's a good problem to have, I suppose. But do tell me what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm going to give you a little artistic video of some of the shots of this car and all of its glory. Now there's glass in there. I'm definitely happy that we put the glass in, because I was driving it earlier to go and get it washed, and I could see it at a junction. And there's just so much more light allowed in the cabin, which makes a big difference when you're driving something like this. But guys, stick around to the next video. I can't remember what it's going to be. I think it's probably going to be the chassis swap, actually. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and now TikTok, which is @Juice Motors. And we'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to subscribe.